I'm not going to deny that C++ can be a complicated language. Simplicity has its benefits, but it has its drawbacks. In C++, we have tons of power, we have tons of control. We get to choose how to do things. There are a number of choices. Some are better than others. If I want to compare I to some limit, I can just type in what the numerical value of the limit happens to be today and add a comment explaining to people. Or I could use a macro, or I could do it right with a const int. Maybe a static const int that's a member variable, a static member variable of a class, so that all of the instances of that class use the same numerical value for it. Then I can access it using the name of the class and the scope resolution operator and the name of the variable, in this case, limit. That's righter than putting the number 3 in your code. That's what I've gone for in this module, things that are righter than others. I have plenty of guidelines elsewhere as well. Use lambdas, use collections. You don't get the whole story from this module, but you get an important story. Of course, I stayed away from naming conventions, where to put your braces, how deep to indent, tabs versus spaces. Boy, talk about some things being righter than others. There's lots of right ways to do this. I think it's fantastic to have a company or team style guide in which you make rules like member variables will all start with the letter M, or never start member variables with the letter M, or use underscores to separate words in your variables, or never use underscores to separate words in your variables. What really matters here is that your team is consistent. It's horrible when you can't read someone's code because one person on the team puts their braces differently and you don't see them, or you do see them, or you can't fit as many lines of code, or whatever your religious argument is. The whole team does the same thing. You're a happy team. I am so not talking about this stuff. What I'm concerned about in your code is that it be correct, that it be high performance, and that it be readable and expressive. And that's where I see these guidelines taking you. You're doing things that will be right, that will catch when you've thought wrongly. You're doing things that will be fast, and you will be doing things that people can understand when they read it. We had no idea, back when I started learning C++, that it would stick around and be such an important language for such a long time. When I think about the languages I knew at the time, Fortran, PL1, can I admit I knew COBOL? I don't use them anymore. Some of the languages that I learned over the last few decades, I learned and then stopped using. And I'm sure you can list languages that you learned and then stopped using. But our C++ code lives on. And you cannot remember what you meant 15 years ago. And if you're lucky, you're not even looking at that code anymore. Someone else is looking at it and they're not going to know what you meant. That's why expressivity becomes so important. And so if there's two ways to write the code and they both work, but one makes it clear what you're doing, that's the way to do it. If as an extra bonus your code is faster or easier to change later or less likely to have bugs in it, that's even better. And that's what I'm aiming for with these guidelines.